Welcome to the Don't Be Afraid podcast. Today I am flying solo. Jamila's off sunning herself, somewhere nice, I hope. My name is Tolu Onilere, and hopefully my name will be scrolling across the bottom, and you'll have seen me other times. If you follow the podcast, if you haven't followed before, what have you been doing? Where have you been? Make sure you watch the other episodes, and this is a good point to start. I'm joined by Choma Agwegu, who is the executive director of TechHer NG, and she leads the state of emergency GBV movement. GBV stands for gender-based violence, and the movement is a coalition igniting citizens to advocate for urgent, comprehensive, and sustainable response to SGBV, which is sexual and gender-based violence. She is an MPhil, I hope I said that right, MPhil candidate in development communication, and believes in using technology to advance women and girls. I won't take that personally that he doesn't want to advance boys as well, but yeah. TechHer NG operates Kuram. I'll get her to tell you what Kuram is in a minute. A platform that records incidents of online gender-based violence, and a pilot program with the education as a vaccine to provide emergency funding for SGB survivors within 24 hours. TechHer's work also includes a digital security self-assessment tool, online safety manuals for parents and children, and an online violation recognition toolkit for young women. Choma serves on the boards of PLAN, or do I just go PLAN? PLAN? Yeah, PLAN's fine, good, yeah. Okay, PLAN International, Nigeria, and Oxfam International. And with all that, you can see how important she is, and I'm so glad. Choma and I have known each other for many, many years. From when we first met, when she was stealing my chicken wings. Yes, yeah. I haven't forgotten that. To when she stealing my chicken wings, to now where she is on the board of Oxfam. And Choma, thank you very much for joining us. The topic today is the impact of social media on Nigerian politics and governance. And as we speak, you'll get to understand why Choma is a great person and has a really good insight to it. But from everything we've spoken about, there's so many things that I would want to sort of branch onto or talk about. And it's weird that in all the years we've known each other, I've never really had the chance to sit down formally like this and really sort of get to know you. So please excuse me. So I want to start with what's TechHer NG?
First of all, thank you for having me. Shame on you for not having this type of conversation with me before now in all the years we've known each other. But what's TechHer? TechHer started as a mistake, as you know. And if you remember, in 2015, I'd put out a form online just asking women, listen, if you use technology for work or play, if you just browse the internet, whatever, and if you want to have a drink, please fill out this Google form and let's meet up. And by the end of the day, I think we had about 100 responses. And so I'm like, okay, I'd hoped to just have responses from my friends, right? And so we decided to turn it into an event. And it became, as it were, a community based event, which fed into one of the strands that TechHer works around, which is community. Because literally, my community came through for that event. Tolu, I remember that you sponsored the data vouchers that people won on the day. A friend of mine provided my church provided the sound equipment for the day. A friend of mine donated free photography, another friend donated small chops, another friend was the MC for free, etc. And something really special happened on the day. We asked women, what do you want to learn? And one person said she wanted to learn how to use MailChimp. Now, my assistant at the time, I taught her to use MailChimp like 2 weeks before, and she put up her hand and said, I can teach you. And so they moved to the side and she taught that lady how to use MailChimp. And I thought about it later and I'm like, you know what? We can get women to teach themselves how to use little bits and bobs, right? That have to do with technology or digital, etc. And that's literally how TechHow was born. We wanted to create a safe place for women to come together, to learn, to collaborate, to do business with each other, but also to just find the ways in which technology and digital tools can make their lives simpler. So that, in a nutshell, is what TechHow is about.
What do you what do you think? I mean, puts women off about tech? Is it, I mean, because there's all that conversation around STEM and stuff and around the
Mhm.
lack of women in it. I mean, why do you think,
Yeah.
well, what do you think it is that, should we say, is the barrier for women?
There's a bunch of things. I think the first barrier I'd say is, from the family, um, from the home. And if you look at the lifespan or the life trajectory of a young girl in Nigeria, first of all, for majority of young girls, the decision is she going to go to school or not? For the boy, it's not a question; he's going to go. But for the girl, why are we wasting money on someone who's going to get married? And this isn't something that used to happen back in the day; it's still happening today. And
Sorry,
so she
sorry
gets
to
to
inter-
school.
sorry, I need to interrupt because again, that's something that's, I think that is it's still happening everywhere, or is that sort
Yes.
of, is, are we
No, no,
talking?
no. It's still happening. It's still happening in Nigeria today. I mean, obviously, if you look at the spread, the geographical spread of people, you have people in the urban areas, people in the rural areas. If you also look at the level of poverty we have in Nigeria today, you see that education is not a it's not automatic. Parents have to make a decision who's going to go. And often the question is not for the boy, it's for the girl. So when we've sent all the boys, then if we have a bit of money, we'll send the girl. Otherwise, she can just follow her mom to work to earn more money to raise the rest of the family. So you have that. And then she goes to school. We're told to follow the courses that are feminine, right? So secretarial studies, mass communication, etc., etc. Because technology and engineering are seen as masculine things. And why do you want to be like a boy if you study these types of things? So there's a lot of it that comes from home, and the children are socialized or cultured in a way that makes them not naturally gravitate towards science, technology, engineering, and math. And we see this because we do a lot of work in secondary schools. And sometimes when you ask them, "What do you want to be?" and a girl says she wants to be an engineer, you literally hear the other girls sneering at her or snickering. It's like, kind of thing. Because, and then somebody will say, "Oh, I want to be a nurse." And they're like, "Yay," because, that's what a girl's supposed to be, a nurse, and those types of things. So you do all of that and then you get to school. And the truth is, I mean, I studied mass communication in Nigeria. My first degree was in Nigeria. And we were taught, one of the modules was computer science. We didn't have any computers in the school. I had another course called typewriting, and we had typewriters. So I can type really, really quick today. Really, really quick. Totally, you know this, right? But I learned how to use a computer outside uni, So a lot of the things that we learn are theoretical, and it doesn't really lend itself to specialization if this is what you want to do or if this is where you want to go. And then I think you have things like, there are no role models. There's no opportunities for internships. It's not as easy to get a place to go and apprentice yourself to learn, etc., etc. Of course, we haven't even spoken about, potential sexual harassment in school and all of those types of things that go into that bucket. So there's quite a bit that stands in the way of having women in technology. And then you come out, you've, scaled all these odds, you come out of school. If you don't find a place to work, you will naturally just gravitate towards the thing that's easy. So you become a teller, a cashier, a saleswoman, you start to do like hair, makeup, etc., etc. And that's why something Melinda Gates said is really important. There's more women coming into technology every day, right? So we keep saying, "Oh, we're bringing in more women, we're bringing in more women." But the next year, we still have to bring in more women because the ones we brought in last year have gone. So there's also a retention problem, right? Because, for instance, women start to give birth. The state of play in offices do not again lend themselves to the comforts that a woman will need to not just leave, but to also be able to come back and fit into the organization. And don't forget, technology continues to evolve. What are you doing that Facebook used to ask in 2004 is not the same question they're asking today. And sometimes when women take breaks to have children, and don't forget, Nigeria is a very fertile country, we take multiple breaks to have babies. By the time you come back, technology has moved. So there's quite a bit that women have to grapple with. There's also the stereotype, and the picture, as it were, of what a techie looks like. And this is someone with dreadlocks, someone with one tattoo or the other, someone carrying a knapsack, someone carrying multiple computers. And if you think about NSARS, this is the stereotype that the police have trained their minds to harass. So if you're going to leave your house in that type of attire, then your parents are like, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" I mean, I'm not even a techie per se, but I remember, and Tolu, you remember that there was a period when I would tell you that my father would keep asking, "So what did you say you do?" what is that thing you say you are doing? The good thing is he'd then see me on things like, the BBC or Al Jazeera or stuff like that to be like, okay, well, at least she's not committing crime, right? Because these big media people are featuring her. But it took a while for him to move from, I don't know what my child is doing. She just carries a computer everywhere. And most times she's in the house, to understanding that, my work kind of like intersects between, digital literacy, advocacy for women, etc.
Okay.
So it is tough.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to sort of just again, not not being defensive, but just trying to get clarity. Is it a developing country or Nigerian thing? Because as you have a look at it and talk about, I mean, and the conversation in the West is moved obviously towards that thing of parity and pay parity and stuff like that. Is that part of the conversation about it, or that's should we say level five when we're still trying to talk level one? Sort of entry. Let's even get into that conversation of women being there.
So, I mean, think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The basic things: food, shelter, clothing. And then you start to go and go and go. And then you get to a point where you come to like self actualization. And it's like, what do I want to be? What's my identity? And things like that. I think that on a lot of levels, Nigeria is on basic. We're still trying to feed. And I'll give you a great example. We do this digital literacy work in secondary schools in Abuja, I mentioned. And when we first started, we had grand designs, right? We wanted to take PowerPoint presentations, we wanted to play videos, we wanted to do this and that and the other. And we got there and we found out that some schools in the Federal Capital Territory are not connected to the electricity grid. So it's not like they don't have power today. It is that they will never have power till they're connected. So then we start thinking, okay, well that means we can't exactly be driving generators to the school, etc. And so we had to create playing cards, which we've now used to teach these children, the basics of technology. And now we're working with a potential funder who is going to help us purchase like delivery bikes that we will use to, bring all of this learning to life. So from a where are we point of view, we're at a point where we went to these schools and the kids were falling asleep in a 1 hour session. And this is a 1 hour session that is filled with games and laughter, etc. So we asked a couple of them, why are you sleeping? And they were hungry. So we then added to our budget money for snacks, money for drinks. And I mean, when you think about the fact that we're a social enterprise, right? We don't have an everlasting budget. When we spoke to the donor, we talked about teaching kids to use technology. We didn't think about food, right? But we got there, found out that these kids needed to eat. And so we started taking snacks to them. And then we found out that if these kids didn't finish their snacks before we left, sometimes the teachers would take it from them because the teachers were hungry as well. So we started providing for the teachers. So in the midst of all of this, where do you have specialization? I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, but sorry, I'm sitting back because it saddens me. One of the big things around um why we started the podcast was the question about technology and the digital divide. I have a real fear about the technology and the way the West is using it and us being left behind. And having the conversations like this thing then makes you. I mean, like I'm I know that. I mean, I thank God for it every year, every day that I'm blessed. Um, I have access to all these things and all that kind of stuff. And the concept of even, I mean, as you said, the classroom is not even the school is not even linked to the
Exactly.
to the thing. So how can we? I mean, so how do we compete? How do we create the next?
Don't You're not even competing yet. You're not even in the space where you can compete yet. So sometimes when I go to meetings and they say, oh, how do we compete on a global level? No, 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 no. You can't. You can't even compete with yourself yet. You have to come to a place like your kids don't even know they are in a competition because they're not. So to get them to that point, I mean, oh, by the way, so I've spoken about us having to feed the teachers. Now we're going to train the teachers because we make these kids excited. We show them stuff like Wakanda Forever and tell them how CGI, for instance, is computer generated images and how you can have a career in technology and be able to work on films like Wakanda. So they're excited, right? And I want to be an engineer. Then they go to ask their teachers questions, and their teachers know diddly squat about technology. So the next time we come, they're like, oh, I had this question, I had that question. And so when we had a review meeting with the teachers and with the principals of some of the schools, and we've worked in 19 schools in Abuja, one of the principals said, why don't you just train us on this thing? So that these children stop asking us questions. These children will stop asking us questions that we don't have answers to. So now we're talking to our donor and we're saying, listen, I know we've come to you a number of times to expand the scope of what we said we're going to do, but we need to train the teachers. So, as far as I'm concerned, right now, the kids we work with, and I'll say that we don't work with kids in the center of Abuja, we work with kids on the outskirts. That was our goal. The kids we work with, they are not in any competition. No, let's be honest with ourselves, they're not in any competition.
Okay. Um, I was gonna ask this at the end, but I don't want to risk forgetting it. If anybody wants to help or get involved in this, please, how do they get involved with what you're talking about now? Because I don't want to go and forget about asking you before you end. How do they get involved? How can we help?
Well, they can send us an email. We have the great thing is that this work has been supported by Commonwealth of Learning, which is the learning arm of the Commonwealth. All the way in Canada. We've also gotten quite a bit of support from a group in Colombia who actually put all of our modules onto tablets and shipped them to us for free. That was fantastic. So the schools now have tablets. However, each class we teach is 70 people. They sent us tablets for, I think, 14 or 15 schools. But that means that you're having about 70 kids to one tablet, which is not sustainable. So, yeah, if people want to support us, just shoot us an email, hello@techrng.com, or, go on our social media, techrng. We're techrng everywhere, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Yeah, send us a message. People want to collaborate with us in different ways.
Thank
So just
you.
send us a message and we'll figure
Thanks,
it out.
editor. Please make sure that the titles and are there and talking and all that kind of stuff. But thank you. Let me move on because time is fast running. Anyway, yeah. Go. You mentioned something, and but I still want to pick on this before we get to the social media conversation because I still think it's something. I think it's something very important. You talked about, or your bio talks about gender-based violence and about sexual gender-based violence, and it was interesting because you were talking about the fact of, women being pushed towards a certain way, as in like, okay, you're a lady, you must go down, that kind of thing. And I thought about it as like, okay, it must be the same for guys who get, okay, I want to go into this, get flipped around. But tell us a bit more about gender-based violence, because I know it's an emotive topic, but I think it's something that really needs to be talked about. So what do we talk? What do you do? What is it about?
One of the things I've learned, and so in addition to everything that I do, I have an activist background, right? So my foray into advocacy in Nigeria was like 2008 or 2009 with the Light Up Nigeria movement, and then went to 2010 with Enough is Enough Nigeria. Occupy Nigeria was 2012, etc., etc. And one of the things that has jumped out for me is that our voices. One of the things that has jumped out for me is the fact that our voices are really powerful, and the ways in which we use our voices can really make a difference. And so, as I continue to use social media, and I've been on social media for a minute, right? As I continue to use social media, and people started to ask me certain questions and seek my opinion on different things. I remember seeing 2012. I remember seeing someone post a picture and a tweet about walking on a street in Abuja, and she was snatched up by members of the Abuja Environmental Protection Bureau. And they fondled her breasts, blah, 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 just really roughed her about and said she was a sex worker. And so she's like, I'm literally coming out of church, right? And so she tweeted this, and some boys were asking, where was she going? What was she wearing? And I said to them, if someone had maltreated your sister or your mom or your wife or your girlfriend in this way, I'm sure you'd be out on the street looking for who to fight. But because you don't know this person, you can't seem to be able to accord them any humanity. So I wrote a whole article about it. About 4 years later, I was in a meeting where we're talking about this same thing happening in Abuja. And the lady apparently, who had been the victim of that incident, stood up and said, I remember you because you stood up for me on Twitter, and I remember that you wrote an article about it. Um, and we're really, really great friends today. She runs the Dorothy Njemanze Foundation. Her name is Dorothy Njemanze. And I started thinking, you know what can we do? In 2019, we protested, and it was called Abuja Police Raids on Women. We protested, went to the minister's office, and we're like, you have to stop these people from snatching women off the street. Because at the time, they would snatch them off the streets. And if these women, a lot of them illiterate women, they would tell them that if they didn't pay for bail, they would be locked up for 6 months. And these young ladies, some of them sex workers, would pay 3,000 naira. And some of them who didn't have money would be raped by the security officials. So we wrote a petition. We went to the minister's office. We went to the National Human Rights Commission. The case was taken to court. These women won. Guess what? The federal government appealed the ruling. Yes, the incident with Dorothy in 2012, she took them to court. She won. The ECOWAS Court of Justice awarded her a certain amount of money that the federal government was supposed to pay as damages, where in 2023, the government hasn't paid. So as I started getting exposed to all of these issues, I did some work for the European Union in 2018, a large chunk of work called Her Story, Our Story. We created the entire communications for the project. And I spoke with people who had suffered abuse. And I said, you know what, Choma, here's a place that your voice can be useful. And we got so involved, just lending our voice, producing all sorts of content, producing all sorts of media assets around this issue, that at a point we had to remind ourselves at TechHer that yes, we have a strand of work that focuses on governance and how digital tools can support governance, but it's not the thrust of our work. We have 3 strands of work: digital literacy, tech for governance, and community. But I guess the more you do a thing, the more there's some impact, the more people say, how can you support this? How can you support that? And I guess that, the state of emergency GBV, that I started in 2020 was a natural consequence, because by this time, my friends and I, a bunch of friends who work in other organizations had done so much work around this, that when this lady was raped and killed in a church during COVID, we're like, listen, COVID be damned, we're going on the streets. And then we managed to go on the streets, on the 5th of June, 2020. And we went straight from there to the office of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila. And then we said the government needs to declare a state of emergency on sexual and gender-based violence. Because I remember UN Women had written an article saying SGBV in Nigeria had become the shadow pandemic next to COVID because of, the spike in incidents. So that's, gender-based violence is any form of violence that's perpetrated against a person because of their gender. Full stop.
Right. I'm going to move on. I actually want to talk a bit more about it, but I'm going to move on because I think we've still haven't touched on the topic, and I'll try and extend another invitation for when you're free and not jet setting around the world to talk about this one specifically, because I want to talk a bit more about that, the focus on online, because I think that, but again, that leads us well into the topic. So impact of social media and on governance and politics. And it's interesting that you describe yourself as an activist. I was about to ask you that, do you see yourself as an activist or as an influencer?
I see myself as an active citizen. I know that sometimes the things that I say will influence the opinions of others, but I run away from calling myself an activist. I can refer to the things I've done within activism and advocacy, but I run away from that because it creates an expectation in the minds of people. So for instance, something happens and then you get people messaging you and saying, oh, Choma, you spoke about this chicken dying. You haven't spoken about the duck dying. And I'm like, well, you have your own social media. How about you speak about it, And I say online a lot that no one's born with an activist tag on their toe. I wasn't branded activist. I have a voice. I have social media platforms like we all do. I've just decided this is what I want to use mine for. I also run away from that because it places some restrictions on me. For instance, some people do stuff to me on social media. I want to cuss them out. But it's like, okay, you're going to disappoint people. And I'm like, so most times I'm like, bring me down from wherever you've placed me. I'm a regular human being like you. I vex, I get upset, etc., etc. So yeah, but I'm not an activist. I'm just an active citizen.
But and what you just said again about, so we say being attacked, leads again well into this sort of social media and the impact on politics. I'm not, I'm on the platforms, but I'm not vocal. And I think there's this thing about, they say that 90% of people are passive and only 10% are vocal. When did you, but we've gone through some, and I don't know if I'm trying to remember whether or not it's just that social media has gotten more powerful, or people getting online, but it feels as if we've gone through really, really divisive set of elections and set of that political process. I'm trying to remember whether or not it was this bad the last time or the time before that. I don't know. But again, if you look at it globally and look at what happened in America with the Trump and stuff, there seems to be a trend towards that. So is social media good in politics? I mean, is it good? Really, really basic.
That's an excellent question. That's an excellent question. My first answer to that will be that social media and technology, it's like a knife. You can peel an orange or you can stab someone. It's not the platform that's the problem per se. It is the users of the platform. So when I teach people how to use technology, I say if you're a nasty person offline, when you go online, you will be nasty because this is your person just reflected via another medium. For Nigeria, however, and our use of technology for the elections and social media, I've been monitoring elections since 2011 in Nigeria. Some of it virtually when I'm not here, and therefore, which even provides greater insight because it means we're using software to monitor online conversations. I think in 2011, what we saw was Nigeria's first use of social media. It was when INEC set up something called the Citizens Contact Center, and people were sending in messages. Don't forget, current President Buhari lost the election. A lot of violence broke out. He's been heavily criticized for not speaking against that violence. Now, by 2015, politicians started realizing social media is a thing. There's some power here. We started seeing people playing around with, small lies here and there, small, just deviations from the truth. And we saw the repackaging of, now President Muhammadu Buhari from a military, leader to a reformed Democrat. It was an entire social media public relations thing that told every other politician that, listen, we all need to be online. And that's why you will notice that after the 2015 elections, politicians flocked online. By 2019, America had their elections, and there was the whole Cambridge Analytica, and the fact that people could influence the outcome of elections by influencing the minds and perceptions of people. Now, Nigerian politicians started playing around sentiment analysis and all of that, injection of discourse, which is when you started seeing things like troll farms. So I think our first foray with troll farming started maybe like 2016, 2017. Now, post 2019 elections, we now learned a few new things. So disinformation, misinformation, and flat out lies. Before it would be propaganda, which would be like, some truth, some lies. But after the 2019 elections, it's like, listen, anything will fly if you have enough people saying it. And that's what we have now. The other really critical thing I'll mention is that Twitter used to be owned by someone who gave a shit, right? Who thought about how words mattered, who gave, who kind of like was invested in things like content moderation. The new owner of Twitter has emptied the content moderation team. And I know this because for the 2023 elections, my friends and I, advocates, we wrote to Twitter and we're like, you have to do something. You cannot let this type of content remain online, blah, 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 blah. And then they wrote us back and said, oh, can you identify the challenges and send to us? And I'm like, excuse me? And then we spoke to people internally and they're like, listen, we don't have a content moderation team specific, regional, that's region specific as it used to exist before, which means that uptake of some of these issues, becomes really, really slow. So I hope all of this, just gives some context as to kind of like where we've come from, where we are now, and helps you see what the next elections will be.
Yeah, it does. I mean, top line, but I mean, there's so much that you've put in there and so many questions. But let me take the most recent one. And he talked about writing to Twitter. How do you, fake news is a huge, huge problem. I remember watching something about Trump that about his about analysis of the Trump campaign, and the guy said that something about that he did he told a lie, and please don't quote me on this. As somebody said, like he told a lie every 60 seconds, and the problem was that by the time you would then try to challenge this, everyone had moved on, and it was just after all like, listen, look, there's constant stuff. But how do you then different, because how do you draw the line between that of like, listen, of an opposing voice? Do you understand? So this is my point of view, but X also has
Mm-hmm.
the right to have that point of view. How is, because you sort of said about, look, downright lies, and
Yeah.
is it, I mean, how, and then, okay, yeah, like when you guys reported to Twitter, what was it? Was it, I mean, how do they, I mean, how do they, how do they define it? I mean, where's the, this is just an opposing point of view that you guys might not agree with versus, okay, this is a out and out lie.
Okay. That's again is a very good question. So TechHub belongs to something called a trusted partner community for Meta. And this means that we are able to flag for them content that goes against their standards. And I mean, for TechHub, this specifically includes incidents of abuse, right? Where women are concerned, etc., etc. So like revenge porn and all of those types of things, or just general abuse, ethnic baiting, racial abuse, all of those types of things. Same thing used to apply for Twitter with their content moderation team, right? However, so when we wrote to them, we didn't write to them to say, for instance, Tolu said I was stupid. No, that's fine. That's your opinion, right? But when you target people based on their ethnicity, when you target people based on a point of view that they have, when you target people based on their sexuality, the rules of social media platforms dictate that those types of things should not be allowed to remain on the platform. And so we'd written to Twitter to say, what's going on with your content moderation teams? Because there's a lot of hate on Nigerian social media around the election. Nigeria, if I tell you, if I raise my hand and I tell you Waka, right? Anybody outside the country would think I'm referring to Shakira's song, because Shakira has a song called Waka Waka, right?
I know, I'm
But
not
in
that
Nigeria,
bad.
if I tell you Waka,
I'm
you
not
do.
that bad. Wow.
But if I tell you Waka as a Nigerian, I'm saying your father. Again, a white man or a white woman will say your father, oh, what happened to your father? But in Nigeria, your father is an insult. This is why contextualized content moderation is critical. And that's why we reached out to Twitter, because you're looking at stuff, but you don't understand it. So we're asking, where are your localized content moderation teams who should flag these types of things and ensure that they're taken down? That's why we wrote them.
Do you then, you said it, I mean, picking something you said something about the fact that, look, if you're a nasty person offline, when you go online, it's just going to amplify it.
It's more of the
Is
same,
that,
yeah.
yeah, is that, because are we then just shifting the blame and saying that, listen, look, rather than saying you shouldn't do this, that we're shifting the responsibility to the platforms? Because as you sort of said, I mean, like, okay, look, from Waka through to, I mean, you mentioned, I asked you earlier on about what Quran means. You said it's a TIV word. Does that mean that then I need to have a TIV person? There are 256 different languages in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So is it just the fact, and it's not, I mean, yeah, can we win? How do we win?
So we picked Quran because we wanted to make the point that Nigeria is bigger than Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba. We also picked Quran because we've done something before and used an Igbo word. And someone said everything we do at Teka is about Igbos because the founder is Igbo. We've done something before and I think we had Igbo and Yoruba people on a panel. And I remember a government office saying that we don't have any Hausa person on the panel. So when we came to Quram, one of the things I was very particular about, I'm like, we must exit the three, in quote, major languages. And that's why we took a name from TIV. If we'd gotten a name from Edo or Kutuwenji or somewhere, we would have used that. And so and one thing I've noticed is that everywhere we talk about, the platform, there will be one TIV person who will smile. And it's like a great icebreaker because you see that person smile and you're like, you're from Benue, you should be like, yes, I know. And we're even pronouncing it, we've kind of like anglicized it now because in our pronunciation, but they'll be like, I recognize that word. It's from my place. And for me, it's our little contribution to some sort of cohesion because we take away the opportunity for an Hausa, Igbo or Yoruba conversation. It's not about any of those. We're focused on other tribes. Your question, can we win? We have to have consequences. There's no consequences for bad behavior in Nigeria. None.
Which then brings us to that thing of there was a whole lot of noise around the government's attempt to put in the consequences. And I remember that thing of that. I'm not. Is that what we mean? Is that what you mean? That because there is that sort of like they did. I mean, yes, there were all the fears about the fact that how would they use it, but there were consequences. Is that what we're talking about? The fact that listen, there does need to be some consequences like that.
So if you look at the Cyber Crimes Act, right, from Section 18 to I believe Section 26, it refers to offenses that very ambiguous offenses. So, for instance, if you say something, if you write something, if you broadcast something that causes upset, that causes offense, that causes something else, you're liable to, I believe, starting and ranging from about 2 years to 5 years imprisonment, with a range of fines, etc. The reason why the Cyber Crimes Act is problematic is because of that ambiguity. And if you look around Nigeria today, there's at least 5 governors who have imprisoned journalists based on that act because they have been offended. And some of these journalists have been, imprisoned in perpetuity. So they've not even gone to court. You're just in because the governor has cited Cyber Crimes Act. Now, with the code of practice that NITDA wanted to bring, wanted to put through, first of all, Tech had joined a number of organizations to say this code of practice is heavy handed. You are snatching powers from places, from other government established bodies, and especially from the legislature, who should be making laws around the regulation and use of the internet, etc., etc. More importantly, a chunk of the code of practice restricts freedom of speech, restricts freedom of association online, etc., etc. So it's one of the problems we have in Nigeria is the fact that the government sees social media as the enemy. That's why you've seen the social media bill has come up more than once. It has failed each time. That's why NITDA is coming up with this code of practice. That's why we've seen the hate speech commission. We've seen the hate speech bill. All of those types of things lend themselves to one thing: the restriction of rights, the repression of free speech, and the shrinking of the civic space. So again, to buttress that, Tech had joined a bunch of organizations as far back as 2014 to draft something called the Digital Rights and Privacy Bill. That bill, Mr. President refused to sign it. And then we had to start from the beginning. Paradigm Initiative leads this effort, and a bunch of us, just support. It has still not been signed because the government just hears rights and they go, oh, we don't want our people to have rights. Because, without realizing that rights come with responsibilities. That bill has responsibilities, it has consequences, but it is measured. It is a product of collaboration, of a lot of research, of a lot of co-creation. What the government wants is to copy something from a repressive country, pass it through the National Assembly in 15 minutes, and make it law. So when you say the government is trying to bring stuff out, I was on a panel yesterday with someone from NITDA, and I said to her, let's be honest, I respect you, I respect your work because I know you, but NITDA is overreaching itself on so many different fronts with this code of practice. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Okay. All right. One at a time. So, but a couple of things I wanted to just touch on before I end. Don't know if we've actually spoken a lot about politics, and so we might do a part 2 on it. But you're really interesting. I mean, those might not know, won't understand might not know that your journey, from the point of view of the fact that you've been, let's say, you said an active citizen, to being a journalist, to even for a short period working within the government, as in on social. Yeah. But you got a lot of you got a lot of attack then. You got a lot of attack. How did you cope with that? How did you?
I cried. And I assume I can be honest here. I cried. And I cried because I didn't understand why I was getting that much hate, why I was getting that much abuse. Again, you know that in Nigeria, once you want to destroy someone, then you accuse them of sleeping with people. And so it was said that I was sleeping with, everyone and their dog and their cat and their father. And that I was a mole across, 2 political parties, etc. So I cried. I spoke to my friends. I drew a lot of strength from my friends and from my family. And then I just moved on. And I guess that's why, like now, there's nothing you can say to me online. Been there, done that, have the T-shirt. Yeah.
And that didn't shake your belief in social media? It didn't shake it? It didn't, or
I mean,
didn't
I do
affect
have
it?
a master's degree in social media. You know that. I have a master's degree in social media. And I'm fully aware of the risks of engaging online. Did it shake me? Yes. That's why I speak about crying, because I cried, and I cried a lot. It was a lot of hate. I think you remember the period. It was a lot of hate. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I guess. And I was also very confident in the decisions that I had made, in the things that I had done. And I knew that I hadn't done anything wrong. I had just said I didn't want to work for a certain political party, um, because it didn't align with my beliefs. And yeah.
Okay. I think we run out of time, but I wanted to just end on one thing. The podcast, as I said, is about the digital divide, or the idea of Africa being left behind in Nigeria, and it's sort of like that
Hmm.
question of, should you be afraid, or do you need to be afraid? Sorry, I've lost you. You're still there. Good. Oh God. You can see technology. Still learning about it. So I wanted to leave with, leave you with. I'll get you to answer two questions before you
Okay.
go, and it's just around that thing of tech and digital and internet. I mean, from your perspective, what scares you?
Hmm.
Yeah. So looking into your crystal ball or whatever it is, but
Hmm.
digital and stuff and tech divide or whatever, what scares you? What keeps you up at night?
Oh, um, I don't know. I think the thing that scares me is the fact that as technology evolves and we find more ways to help people, and we find ways to make our lives simpler, there are more people finding ways to harm others. So when you think about the ways in which, for instance, artificial technology, machine learning, blockchain, etc., can be used to advance healthcare, advance workplace industrialization, etc., the same artificial intelligence is used to create deepfakes, is used to start wars, it's used to do all of these types of things, it's used to crash systems, right? There's the famous anecdote of, I think it's the US and Israel, getting someone to put in a USB into a computer in Iran, and crashed 1,144 computers with one flash drive. So the networked nature of our systems, and the more our systems continue to talk to each other, it opens us up more to just greater vulnerabilities than we had before. For instance, you log into TikTok, and TikTok tells you that by logging into TikTok, you give them the right to access, post on, delete, etc., from your other social media accounts and from your Gmail, right? So there's the interconnectedness is a blessing, but the vulnerabilities are incredible. So it's a little scary. I still believe in technology and its power for good. I still believe that social media is like a knife, and you can peel an orange
Wait!
off the.
Stop! Because that's my next question. Hang on, let me lead you into it, because they say there's something about the psychologists talk about that you leave people with the good, and that's what they remember. So I want to leave them with the good. What excites you?
Mhm.
What excites you about tech and digital?
I think just the fact that the opportunities are limitless. I remember back in 2015, a woman said she wanted to learn how to build a website because her husband said she was stupid. And that's not the biggest idea, to learn how to build a website, but it was important to her for that reason. And so we taught her to build a website. And I kept in touch with her for a while, and she said she took it to her husband, and he said, I didn't believe you could do something like that. You could do something like that. And for me, I'm like, this is worth celebrating. We have brought women together in WhatsApp groups and then encouraged them to apply for certain things. They've applied for those things, they've gotten them. We've gotten people to work with each other because they've come to our events and met themselves and built businesses out of that. Those types of human interaction type things give me a lot of joy. When I watch our children in these schools across Abuja, and some of them say, you know what, I want to work with computers, it gives me a lot of hope that, one child at a time, this thing is happening. When I see the fact that we can create products and people in far-flung parts of the country can access those products because of technology, because of simple technologies like WhatsApp, it gives me a lot of joy. Our emergency response fund, we've received applications from Borno, from Ebonyi, from all sorts of places, because people have shared these things on social media, meaning that survivors of gender based violence have been able to access within 24 hours enough money, sometimes as much as 200,000, no questions asked, to be able to get themselves out of difficult situations. Technology gives me joy, gives me a lot of joy. And I just believe that, you know what, we'll figure it out. There's something in the media called the social responsibility theory, and it says that a society will self correct, right? And so when I look at Nigeria today, as much as I agonize about the things that are going on, I'm just like, you know what, this society will self correct.
Amen. Absolutely. I hope so. I hope so. No, it is. It is. I mean, by nature, I think I'm an optimist. And I really do.
Indeed.
I really do. Thank you, Choma. Thank you ever so much for your time. Thank you for sharing it. And you said earlier on that it's shame on me that we don't sit down to do this. And even in 40 minutes or so, we haven't even. There's just so much more that I want to talk about. I mean, that just sort of lead into this, lead into that. But I've
Call
appreciated
me,
you.
call me,
Don't worry. No,
call
no, no,
me.
no. Now it's got to be recorded. But I thank you ever so much. Yeah, I found it insightful. I hope the people who are listening found it useful and insightful. The links to TechHer and everything, and also the SGB links as well. Please, those will be shown as well. So anybody needs to reach out and stuff, that's available. Yeah, till we speak again. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. You know what to do if you aren't already following us, do it. Not subscribing, do it. You haven't listened to the other ones, go ahead and listen to them, and get yourself ready for the next ones. So that's it. Oh no, I have to do an old age thing. So my sign out is Nanu Nanu. That's for you guys to figure out what that means. Nanu Nanu. Okay. Yeah, exactly. You can see the young ones. Go and Google it. Nanu Nanu. Bye bye.